this April 24th meeting of the Senate Finance Committee will come to order. We have two bills on the agenda. We're bringing back Senate File 5289 of Senator Champion because of amendment. We found out that there was a provision in the tax that should be in the tax bill, and Senator Champion and Senator Rest have discussed that and decided to remove it from this bill and so on. So, Senator Champion, to get started, you moved that we reconsider the vote taken on Friday, April 19th, to recommend Senate File 5289 as amended pass.
That's my motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. On that motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. Senator, you have an amendment?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor. You are, Your Honor. I will say you are the honorable one. Mr. Chair, I have the A8 amendment, and I would offer that for the committee's consideration.
And I believe the A8 amendment is in our packets.
And Mr. Chair, this is the amendment to remove the language that we should not have in our bill. It still allows us to keep in our bill the portion that we are paying for, which is $700,000. And this language around the tax credit and any of the tails, that is going to show up and be paid for by the tax bill. And so Senator Rest and I had the chance to talk about it. She was already in agreement with it, and we just wanted to come back to the committee and make sure that that was done appropriately. And that provision is a provision that Senator Pratt has worked really hard on, and so we wanted to make sure that we did it some justice here.
On that motion, Senator, nobody, I will, Senator Pratt.
No, Mr. Chair, I want to thank Senator Champion for carrying the provision, and this was an error many of us should have caught, and I appreciate that Senator Champion and Senator Rest did.
And there is a revenue note in our packets for people who are interested. Mr. Naumann, you want to comment on it quickly?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just maybe edit that quickly and say I have it available if members want it. It's the provision in question that this amendment would delete carries a revenue loss of $40,000 a year. I'm happy to distribute it. I knew it was coming out, and I just make it available if you would like to look at it.
Is there further discussion on the A8 amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails.
And Mr. Chair,
Senator Champion.
I offer the A10 amendment for the committee's consideration, and I can explain it once each member has a copy of the A10.
Is it distributed, or is it?
It should be in or on top of packets.
It should be either in or on top of packets. Senator Champion, you want to explain it?
I will. One of the, I discussed this with the committee at the last hearing where we talked about there was a placeholder in our bill for language that was going to commit $3 million to the suburbs and those areas that we did not have highlighted in our Promise Act from last year. So they would become a part of the Promise Act, but there's this infusion of revenue for those businesses in the counties of Anoka, Carver, Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, Scott, and Washington, excluding the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. That was really important because the cities of St. Paul and city of Minneapolis and the others got revenue appropriated to them last year. This is an amendment that I've been working on, or idea that I've been working on, or we've been working on, because I see Senator Muhammad here as well, with Senator Pratt, because this was something that we wanted to make sure that we addressed. So that is the amendment, and I would hope I could get your support on the A10 amendment.
Is there any discussion on the A10 amendment? Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Champion, and again, thank you for working on this amendment. Members, we've, for a lot of the programs that we've implemented, inadvertently found out that suburban ring counties could not comply with the requirements, and so this allows us through our partnership with NDC to begin to truly make this a statewide program. And I just want to thank Senator Champion and his team for continuing to work on this. I think we've gone through a couple iterations, and this should be one that works for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let the record reflect, we have had a quorum since the beginning, since I didn't mention that and somebody wanted me to. On the A10 amendment, is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Senator Champion on Senate File 5289.
Mr. Chair, I just ask that we pass it again and for it to be passed to the floor.
Senator Champion moves that Senate File 5289 as amended be recommended to pass. On that motion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion prevails.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee.
Thank you, Senator Champion. Senator Fateh. Senate File 5326. Welcome to the Senate Finance Committee with the Higher Education legislation. Go ahead, Senator Fateh, when you're ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we begin, I'd like to start with the A14 amendment, if that's okay.
Senator Fateh has A14 amendment. It looks like it's in our packets.
It should be at the
It
back,
is.
the very back of your packet.
It should be in the very back of the packets. On the A14th amendment, could you briefly explain it?
Yeah, it just clarifies that the maximum amount for administrative costs will be capped at 5%. This is just so that more money can go towards the grants rather than the administrative process. And
Okay, and
Yeah.
Senator Fateh, you're hard to hear right now.
sorry, can you hear me better right now? Awesome. And it just clarifies that the maximum amount that can be used for administrative costs, just so that more money goes towards the grants.
Okay.
So I think it caps it at 5%.
Okay, is there any discussion on this amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. On the bill as amended.
Should we begin with the walkthrough first, or?
Go ahead, Mr. Olofson.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, in your packets, you should have a one-page spreadsheet with, in the top left corner, Higher Education Committee -2024 Senate position, SF 5326, as left Higher Education Committee, top right corner, 4/18/2024, 6:14 p.m. So the Higher Education Committee, as a general fund target, received $500,000 one time, and the bill before you today meets that target of $500,000 one-time spending for the 24-25 biennium. So columns A just shows the different appropriations and different moves within Article 1 of the bill, and columns F through K shows the Senate position. So beginning with the Office of Higher Education, on line 7, for the ALS research grant, it cancels $19.604 million in fiscal year 24, and then reappropriates that with availability through fiscal year 2029 on line 8, that exact same $19.604 million. On line 9, there's a reduction in the transfer to the North Star Promise of $5.04 million in fiscal year 25 from the general fund. And on line 10, there's a corresponding increase to the Fostering Independence grants of $5.04 million from the general fund to fill a funding shortfall for the program. So for a total general fund impact of $0 to Office of Higher Education, since both offset. Moving on to Minnesota State, here's the $500,000 one time in fiscal year 25. This is for the Kids on Campus initiative to support Head Start programs on college campuses. This comes from Senate File 3806. This is a $500,000 one time from the general fund in fiscal year 25. On line 19, the only modification for the University of Minnesota is for the $10 million appropriation to Centricare. This expands and modifies the language so that the University of Minnesota can use the funds to how they want for the Centricare appropriation. And that summarizes all of the general fund changes. So as you can see on line 29, the $500,000 one time to Minnesota State of additional spending. For non-general fund revenues, moving on down to line 38, there's new fee revenue to the Office of Higher Education for institutions that need multiple revisions for licensure and registration applications. This is anticipated to bring additional $21,000 ongoing beginning in fiscal year 25 to an account in the Special Revenue Fund. So $21,000 in fiscal year 25, and then a total of 42 in the 26-27 biennium. And that summarizes the spreadsheet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? I have one question about the Fostering Independence Grants, the FIG grants. This one-time transfer, that's the amount we need in order to continue keeping it going for until we have next budget cycle?
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, yes, because I've heard from members of both parties about the importance of that, and I think we all recognize how valuable that program has been. Are there other questions from members of the committee? Senator Draheim and then Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this forward. I guess my question has to do with line 6.27, consideration of criminal record limited. In a little leeway, Chair, I know this probably isn't a financial question, so I'll keep it short, but I'm just wondering what, as a dad that just sent my daughter off to college, this is a little concerning that schools don't have as much ability to do a background check, let's say in a dorm room, for violent felons or sexual assault. And a lot of the dorms today are co-ed, and they have wings and common bathrooms, et cetera. So I do have a problem with that section. So can you explain to me why the need for this?
Senator Fateh.
Thank you so much, Senator Draheim and Mr. Chair. So it does explicitly exclude violent felonies and sexual assault, so those concerns, so that they can ask for those instances.
Thank you.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Draheim really started down the path, and appreciate Senator Fateh's question, because he really gets to the heart of the concern. And let me just talk about this real quick and read part of the bill. A post-secondary institution may not inquire into, consider, or require disclosure of a criminal record or criminal history of an applicant for admission. It then goes on to say that they may inquire only for convictions that have occurred within the previous 5 years for a violent felony or sexual assault. Well, Mr. Chair, it's highly likely that someone who's been convicted of one of those crimes is, if not incarcerated, is still on probation, and has not been fully cleared. Our college campuses, when we send our kids to college, we expect that the university, the state college, can keep them safe. I'm kind of disturbed by Senator Fateh's admission that we are, in fact, blinding the ability of our post-secondary system to knowing who they're accepting in their admissions process. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would offer the A15 amendment.
Senator Pratt offers a 15 amendment, and I don't think it's in our packet, so we'll wait while it's distributed. Thanks.
Thanks.
On the amendment, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, Mr. Chair, you've done a very good job of making sure that we have policy bills and finance bills. And, with this being under the policy section, and given that we are extremely concerned with our student safety, our kids' safety, and on some of our campuses, particularly those that are in or close to the city, we should we should know who we're admitting into the school. We should know who we're admitting into the dorms. And so, Mr. Chair, this just takes out this section of bill, strikes the repealer, and sets us back to current law. If this is a good idea, I think it needs some additional work. I'm not sure that that this has had the vetting that it really truly needs. And so I would encourage members to vote in favor of the A15 amendment.
Senator Fateh, then Senator Dames.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Pratt, for offering the amendment. I'm going to recommend that the committee votes no on this amendment. This does have a big impact on students that want the opportunity to pursue higher education, and also folks that pursue higher education and get a degree we see a decrease in recidivism rates. And there's no data that suggests that folks, excluding the violent felonies such as sexual assault and other violent felonies, that those that are coming back and pursuing the higher education, they don't commit crimes at a higher rate than the general student population. So I'm going to request that the committee votes no, and thank you so much for offering the amendment.
Senator Dames, then Senator Draheim.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Fateh. I would encourage people to vote for this amendment. I think it's unfortunate that we're putting these kinds of rules in the game at this point. I think that there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences, and I think it's unfortunate that we're going to put our colleges in that position. And I can tell you, if some young lady gets raped or some young person gets murdered, and these people have had previous crimes of the same thing, shame on us. We should not be doing this, and I'd encourage you to vote for this amendment. And this needs a lot more vetting than what it's got. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair. And then my question probably is to nonpartisan staff on the section 136A.155. Is that men's state and private colleges, or is that every institution except for the U of M? I'm looking at line 6.19 to 6.21, members.
Ms. White, go ahead. Ms. White.
Mr. Chair, members, that does apply to all institutions, all public, or institutions of higher education.
So, Chair, thank you. So that would be all the private schools for-profit and nonprofits?
Mr. Chair, Senator, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Westrom, then Senator Pratt.
Well, Mr. Chair, Senator Fateh, I would speak in favor of this amendment. I guess we're hearing you say that there's no higher crime or recidivism or crime rate from those that have committed these criminal acts. I guess common sense would tell me that's hard to believe. And so do you have some evidence? Where did your committee get this information that establishes that those that have been convicted of criminal offenses have no higher rate of conducting criminal activities thereafter? And then I've got a follow-up question.
Senator Fateh.
I can provide you with a report that's, sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Westrom. I can provide you with a report with the data as well.
Mr. Chair, just inform us of the report. Which report are you looking at? And what did it tell you? Summarize it for us, please.
Go ahead, Senator Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can have someone from OHE or Department of Corrections come up if you'd like as well, Senator Westrom. Or Senator White can answer this as well.
Ms. White, go ahead.
Mr. Chair and members, it's my understanding when the senator who was the author of the bill presented this bill, this section was prompted by the federal report related to Ban the Box and those admissions practices regarding students with criminal records. So it was a federal report, and I'm not exactly sure what the name of it was, but it was on the institution's practices with regard to students who have criminal records, and Ban the Box was, I think that was the name of the report, I'm not sure.
So, Mr. Chair, while I ask my next question, maybe we could get the name of that report. Senator Fateh is the author of the bill. I would hope you'd have that. It's pretty important information if we're going to be making this kind of a decision. And I guess I'd just add the perspective with somebody who's got 2 twin daughters going off to college next year. Senator Draheim's daughter just was sent off. This would be a pretty big concern. But in my district, I border the South Dakota state line, and I think this would be a pretty bad message. In my area, people decide where they're going to college. Across borders isn't a big deal with the reciprocity and location. South Dakota, North Dakota, in some cases, southern Minnesota, Iowa is not that far, and people will drive 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours to a college campus. And so, Senator Fateh, this seems like it would be the wrong message we'd be wanting to send to parents like myself that are sending their children off to college, not knowing who's going to be in that dorm, and now having a much tougher time for those colleges to weed out people who have engaged and have been convicted of criminal activity. And so oftentimes it might be a smaller crime that turns into a bigger crime, and I'd be concerned about that as a parent. And so, Senator Fateh, while you're getting the report, maybe you could also just answer, where did this proposal come from? Who was the chief author of this proposal to take away this criminal background information for colleges to be able to make that decision?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Westrom. And the report's called Beyond the Box. It's a federal report from the U.S. Department of Transportation, the U.S. Department of Education. I'm sorry. And the chief author was Senator Umu Verbain, working in partnership with the committee in consultation with Department of Corrections, OHE. We had a committee hearing on this, and she also worked really closely with the victim advocate groups such as Violence Free Minnesota, as well as the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault. to make this happen, so that they're also comfortable with this language. And the report also outlined that less than 5% of the students that engaged in misconduct, engaged in misconduct while on campus had a prior criminal history.
Mr. Chair, that last part you said, what about 5% of the student on campus?
Yep, less than
They
5%.
engage in this criminal issue, or can you clarify that?
Yeah, less than 5% of those that engaged in misconduct on campus had a prior criminal history.
So Mr. Chair, so Mr. Senator Fateh, as long as it's less than 5%, it's not that big of a deal? Is that basically what we can conclude from that?
Well, I'd say, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Westrom. I would say more than that. I would say that these folks need to have an opportunity to pursue higher education without being boxed out. If we want to ensure that they have a proper transition or a rightful transition back into society, being able to get an education, get a job with a livable wage, then we need to make this happen.
So, Mr. Chair, Senator Fateh, basically what I'm hearing you say is if we leave this provision in, we're okay with 1 out of 20 students being subject to this crime, because 19 of the 20 in this category aren't likely to reoffend, and we're okay with that. I just think that's pretty risky and pretty dangerous for us as a legislature to be sanctioning this kind of hiding of facts that would be very helpful for parents and colleges to know for the parents that are sending their children to campuses and want them to be safe. I think this is a good amendment. This is an idea that needs a lot more vetting if we're going to do something like this. But we're not talking just online schools here, Senator Fateh. Maybe that's where they should start, so they're not interacting in dorm rooms and next door to other students that don't have that history. So last question, Senator Fateh. Did you say the Coalition Against Sexual Assault is pushing this this language and supports it?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator Chair Marty, and thank you, Senator Westrom. The coalition, as well as Violence Free Minnesota, has been working with Senator Umur Verbain to make sure that they are comfortable with this language. And to your first point, if we're a state and a country that has a goal of reducing recidivism rates, higher education has been proven to do just that.
Well, Mr. Chair, Senator Fateh, maybe there's a way to get them an education. I know several people that have been in prison have actually been able to better themselves and do education while they're in prison serving time. But it's a big difference of getting them an education, of higher education, to further their career and lives versus putting dangerous people in dorm rooms next to my children going to college next year. So that's where the line should be drawn, and I would hope we could all support taking this out.
Senator Fateh, I think I heard you say something that I think was just misinterpreted by somebody. Did you say that that report said that only 1 out of 20 of the 5% of the crimes committed on campus were people who had prior convictions?
I could say the opposite also. 95% of misconduct on campuses is done or committed by students without a criminal history.
Right, in other words.
So I said 5%
95
do and 95, yeah.
Only 5% of the crimes committed on campus were people who
Correct.
had the prior things. I think it was interpreted by him as saying 1 in 20 of the people who had prior convictions commit more offenses or something, and I think you were saying something different.
Well, Mr. Chair,
Senator Westrom.
while we're talking about that, we'd have to know what's the percentage of those students on campus. My hope is it's probably less than 5% of the students on campus are already in that category. And so if there is less than 5%, it's obvious if they're committing 5% of those crimes, of the crimes are by people in that category, it's a higher percentage, because you'd have to know how many students are on campus and how many students are in that category. And I sure would think we wouldn't have 5% or more of the students on a college campus in the with a criminal record like this. Maybe I'm incorrect and naive, but that's what you'd have to ask if you're justifying that only 5% of the crimes are done by this category of people. That would mean you'd have to have 5% or more of the population being past criminal offenses. And so I think that is pretty alarming.
Senator Pratt, then Senator Friends, and Senator Draheim.
Well, thank you.
Senator Pappas first?
No, I just want to be on the list.
Oh. Go
Well,
ahead, Senator Pratt.
thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is a really good discussion. A couple of things on this. You know, when we look at best practices, you know, a couple of guidelines. So one, I looked up the Beyond the Box report. The one I found, Senator Fateh, comes from the Brookings Institute, not from the federal government. So I might have the wrong reference, but at least that's what I found. But the guidance that most experts are suggesting is to ask for convictions only, not for arrests, or to ask for felony convictions only, not misdemeanors and minor infractions, and to specifically focus on those offenses that occurred after the student reached the age of majority. We're making an assumption here, Mr. Chair. We're making an assumption that our higher ed system is discriminating against people with prior convictions. And if they're nonviolent convictions, then my guess is they're probably being admitted. But to the author's own testimony, we're bringing in violent felonies and sexual assault at a time when we, you know, hear on the news routinely, particularly around the sexual assault piece happening on a routine basis. And Mr. Chair, just looking at the repealer, I want the committee to understand that what's being done in the repealer, currently the Department of Corrections is prohibited from paying for college education programs beyond the Associate of Arts degree level for an inmate convicted of first or second degree murder, and for paying an Associate of Arts college education program for an inmate convicted of first or second degree murder if the inmate's participation in the program does not increase the cost of the program to the institution. We're taking that away. We're creating an additional cost to the Department of Corrections. We're creating additional cost to society by lifting those criteria. This is not just simply about making sure we get higher admissions, but, you know, what are those, at what level is the state required to pay for these educations? And by completely, you know, taking off the restrictions we have in the repealer, that has a significant impact. As a father of a daughter, I want to know that my institution of higher ed is screening, is making sure that our students are safe on campus. And I'd be interested to see the study that Senator Fateh is talking about, but it's not available to us at this point. And this feels like it's a policy that is yet mature enough to be in front of the Minnesota Senate. It feels like a policy that still needs a lot more discussion. And Mr. Chair, I encourage members to vote yes, because we are here to protect not, you know, the public safety, but we should be thinking about these young adults as they begin their life as adults. You've heard me say on occasion, I hope he's not listening, but I've said in the past that I've got a son that's brilliant but not very bright. Well, he got bright after a while, but it took some time. We're sending these kids off to these institutions of higher learning, and we're not saying that these kids can't be admitted, not at all. My guess is they're probably still being admitted at some point. We know the Department of Corrections is paying for some of it. This is simply to hide the fact and to put a new mandate on our institutions of higher learning, not to, and hamper their ability to do the job that we've tasked them to do and that parents expect them to do. And so, Mr. Chair, I encourage a yes vote.
Senator Fateh, then Senator Friends, Draheim, and Pappas.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Pratt. So 2 points, one towards the violent felony sexual assault piece and then the repealer piece. First, I want to reiterate again for the record that this still does allow institutions to ask about violent felonies and sexual assault. So it does allow that. And to the repealer piece, we know that higher education does reduce the rates of recidivism, and that's just a fact. And the vast majority of folks that are incarcerated will at some point be released. And we know that having them or allowing them to participate in higher education is good for our public safety and better for us all. So I just wanted to make that point. But thank you so much, Mr. Chair and Senator Pratt.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to that point, Senator Fateh, I understand that these people are going to be released. And one of the reasons why Senator Draheim and Senator Champion and I worked so hard in the Jobs Committee a few years back to make sure that there were opportunities for people to get jobs. And they have the opportunity today to be admitted into institutions of higher learning. That's not the question. The question is, should they know this fact and do the admission in a way that continues to maintain the safety of students on campus? And so we keep talking about the fact that formerly incarcerated people or currently incarcerated people will do better if they get an education. I could say that about the K-12 system as well. That's not the issue. The issue is, are we blinding our institutions from doing the job of keeping students safe on campus? And can the admission be tailored in such a way that it meets the goals of both? And the language that you're proposing and the language that I'm suggesting we remove allows the institutions of higher learning to continue to find that balance, when what you're doing in this bill is blinding them from that responsibilities. And that's the difference. So we don't disagree on some of your statements. You're just not addressing the issue at hand and the concerns that we have. And that's the purpose of the amendment, Senator Fateh.
Thank you. Senator Friends.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Fateh, and members for a good discussion. I'm a no on this amendment. First of all, Senator Draheim and Senator Pratt, I sent you a link to the study in question, so that'll allow all the members to have a look at it who said they hadn't seen it. A quote from page 21, no evidence has established a direct causal link between students with criminal records and an increase in campus crime rates. So that's what that study says, and I hope we take it into account. Senator Fateh, the way I'm understanding the language in your bill is that an institution, once it's made its decision on admissions, can inquire further about a history of criminal activity, so that we are, in fact, placing the responsibility on the campuses and the individual schools, if they choose to so inquire. So in my opinion, that allows those individual campuses and institutions to make that choice if they want. But what I think you're not getting enough credit for, Senator Fateh, here is that we are constantly in society trying to balance our goals of reducing recidivism with our other goals. Public safety is a goal. I'm in for public safety, but it is not our only policy goal. And so I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. Your decision here is that this is a good provision. It gives us a reduction of recidivism. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm a no vote on the amendment to leave it in, and also happy to have further discussions with you or any other members, especially since you have clearly engaged those advocacy groups who have the most, including groups that try to reduce sexual assault on campus, which is a nationwide issue for us. So thank you for that work, Senator Fateh, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to address this amendment.
And Thank you, Senator Friends. Now, I believe the report is also posted on the Senate Finance Committee website for the hearing. So Senator Draheim, then Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator Friends, for sending that report out. I appreciate that. And I think, Senator, you hit it right on the head. That I think we all want everybody to be successful. And the returning citizen, I've done a lot of bills over the years on that. I think a very important segment of our population, and we shouldn't forget about them. What I have problems with is this one size fits all. So every institution that we can dictate to, you are dictating to, other than the U of M. That's my problem with the language here. You know, I think most colleges probably have procedures in place, and I do realize that after they're admitted, they can come back and ask further questions to screen them, if you will. I guess where I'm going with this, have you asked, or do the colleges, the private colleges, or Minn State support this section of your bill?
Senator Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Draheim. Senator Omnibus, the chief author of this bill, worked in consultation with OHI. She met with the Private Colleges Council, in addition to the other groups that we spoke with, the Violence Free Minnesota, and the other assault awareness groups, to make sure that it's something that we get to a language that folks are comfortable with. Minn State has said that they do support the language. I think the Private Colleges Council do have concerns, but they have been engaged in active conversations with the chief author, and that's where we're at right now.
Chair, one
Go
last
ahead,
question.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you, and I'll wrap it up. Thank you. So do you know what those concerns were with the private colleges? Senator Fateh?
I think they wanted to tailor the list of offenses to be, sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Draheim. I think they want to tailor the list of offenses that can be asked about.
Thank you.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Friends really articulated my thoughts very well, so I'll save any further comments on the bill itself.
Is there Senator Champion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to Senator Fateh and the others. I'll be brief because a number of issues have already been raised. One, I'd just like to remind the committee that we have certainly said that this is the Finance Committee and that we would not try to interfere when it comes to policy, because we didn't have an opportunity to hear the robust discussion that the Policy Committee had an opportunity to think about. One thing that is also clear is that I was the original author and the one who passed ban the box that the federal law was sort of fashioned after. And one of the things that we believe to be very important is that a person should be judged on their skills and qualifications and not just on their past, that there has to be a balancing act in order to make sure that we're not hampering the person's ability to go forward while we're also thinking about, you know, public safety and all the other notions. I think Senator Fateh has done a good job of making sure that the language says when the application comes in, you just can't deny a person because they may say, I've had a pass, right? But if there's an offer, now the higher learning institution has the ability and freedom to ask questions about their pass and pull records or do whatever they can do or need to do. But what I also think is really important here is something that we've thought about with ban the box. If there's something that comes back in a person's past that requires a discussion, that the higher learning institution allows the applicant an opportunity to submit an explanation, to talk about it. Because sometimes when you look at a record, it appears much more egregious on its face until you get into the facts of it to really figure out and learn what has happened. This does not create what I think I heard, a one-size-fits-all. It creates an opportunity for all, because there's nothing that says no matter if you have a men's state or private college that you can't say, this is not going to work for us. And they have that ability to do that. The thing that this bill does is that it just says that if that post-secondary institution rescinds an offer of admission, they must do something, just provide an explanation for the basis, right? And provide the applicant with an opportunity to appeal the decision to rescind. That's due process. That's just saying, hey, give us that information. And so, members, I think it's important for us to remember that we're not a policy committee, and that we should judge one on their skills and qualifications, and that we also know that higher education correlates with higher wages. And therefore, we benefit, because I do think it's important for all kids to be safe on the college campus, and not just girls, but guys as well. I want all students to be safe, but I think that this is an important balance, and I hope that we would appreciate that in real time. So thank you very much, Senator Fateh, and I will be a no on the amendment, because again, this is not a policy committee. I didn't have the benefit of being a part of that policy discussion, but I think they are striking the right balance. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee.
Senator Pratt?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Champion, I certainly appreciate your guidance on the role of the Finance Committee. I would just remind the committee that we spent over an hour on a policy provision that I believe you, Senator Champion, raised. And so I find it interesting that when it's a minority position that we all of a sudden decide that we should not be talking about policy, but only talking about the financial aspects. As far as the one-size-fits-all, Mr. Chair, it's pretty clear. A post-secondary institution may not inquire into or consider or require disclosure of a criminal record. That's a one-size-fits-all. That's everybody's doing the same thing. It doesn't leave any room for judgment by the institution of higher ed. I think, members, this is a common sense proposal that leaves the decision where it should be right now at each individual institution to manage their campuses, to manage their student safety. And with that, Mr. Chair, I request a roll call vote.
Senator Pratt requests a roll call vote on the 815 amendment. Is there further discussion? If not, the staff will take the roll.
Senator Marty?
No.
Senator Friends?
No.
Senator Pratt?
Yes.
Senator Champion?
No.
Senator Dames? Yes. Senator Draheim?
Yes.
Senator Eichhorn?
Yes.
Senator Mohammed?
No.
Senator Murphy? Senator Pappas?
No.
Senator Westrom?
Yes.
Senator Wickland?
With 5 votes in favor and 6 votes opposed, the motion does not prevail. Further discussion on the bill. Senator, Mr. Naumann, you have an oral amendment, you said?
Mr. Chair and members, for your consideration, Section 1 of Article 1 of the bill on page 2, this is an appropriation that makes changes to the ALS research grants that were made in fiscal 2023. Money is canceled and then reappropriated on line 2.3 of the base bill language, and that is an appropriation in fiscal year 2024. Staff recommends for your consideration that we make that effective date after line 2.23. This section is effective the day following final enactment, which will make the appropriation available.
You mean after line 2.32, correct?
What did I say?
2.23.
My apologies, 2.32.
On the, Senator Friends moves the effective date of,
This section is effective
day after final
the
enactment.
day following final enactment.
For after, on page 2 after line 32. On that motion, is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Oops, Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, what's the reason we want to move it to the day following enactment and not normal, July or August?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Westrom, I apologize that if I wasn't specific about this. The change is a fiscal year 2024 appropriation authority. So given that we are in fiscal year 2024, under the natural, if it were effective on July 1, we are already past the end of fiscal year 2024.
Thanks for the explanation.
Further discussion on the Friends oral amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Further discussion on the bill? Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just really want to applaud Senator Fateh and Senator Mover-Baton and the Higher Ed Committee working in tandem with the importance of getting formerly incarcerated persons educated and formerly incarcerated persons educated, that how important that is, that I know Senator Fateh is supportive of us providing programming space at our prisons so that we could get people into not only higher ed, but into treatment, mental health treatment, chemical dependency treatment, and really do a better job in preparing people for kind of civil society, and that they do a lot better. So to get them started in prison, but then be able to continue their education after they're released is just so important. And I mean, for us as an economy, we have a workforce shortage, so we can't really leave anybody behind. We need to get people educated and prepared for the workforce. And it also makes them better citizens, less likely to reoffend if they have jobs, if they can get housing, everything that's so important to really be successful and reintegrate with your family. So I'm really excited to see these provisions. Thank you.
And Senator Fateh, again, I want to restate, I think the importance of making sure foster kids get their education is important. I'm glad you were able to find a temporary fix for that shortfall. Senator Pappas moves Senate File 5326 as amended be recommended pass. Is there further discussion on that? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion prevails. Thank you, Senator Fateh, and thank you, Eric and Joan. Thank you. Tomorrow morning, this is the last business we have for today. Tomorrow morning, we're going to meet at 8:30 in this room to take up the Judiciary and Public Safety Omnibus Bill. We're going to recess for session and then come back after session to finish that bill if necessary and take up the Education Finance Bill. And we will stay in room 1200 after session. We'll update the posting to reflect that because I think we were at one point posted for another room. If there's no further discussion, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.